today on this Palm Sunday. In our gospel reading, we heard the narrative of the passion of our Lord Jesus Christ. Crucifixion was one of the most brutal forms of execution known in all of human history. And that's what I'd like us to reflect upon, the reality of the death and suffering that Jesus underwent for us. We know that Jesus' suffering began well before he was nailed upon the cross. On the night before he died, he was betrayed by one of his best friends, Judas, and denied 3 times by another one of his best friends, Peter. After celebrating the Last Supper, he underwent overwhelming agony in the Garden of Gethsemane. And what was the cause of that great agony? Well, several things. First of all, Jesus was terrified of the horrible suffering and death that he would endure that next day. He was intensely attacked and assaulted by the devil. He experienced doubt and anxiety, which a man on the point of making some great sacrifice always experiences to some degree. And he felt the weight of all the sins of the world upon his own shoulders. This agony in the garden was so great that literally the blood vessels around his sweat glands burst, causing a bloody sweat to issue forth from his pores. Then he was unjustly arrested, put on trial, beaten, mocked, and put into prison for an entire night without any food or water. The next morning, he was tied to a pillar and brutally scourged and flogged for approximately 45 minutes. The blows from the scourging and flogging were so intense that his flesh was torn to pieces, penetrating down to the bone. If this wasn't enough, they wove a crown of thorns and forcefully shoved it onto his head. And he lost even more blood from that. They crowned him with thorns, first of all, to inflict even more physical pain upon him, but also they did it to make fun of him, to ridicule him, and to mock him, to humiliate him, to make fun of his claim to be a king. He was then condemned to death by crucifixion and was forced to carry his cross by himself. It is estimated that the distance from Pilate's palace to Mount Calvary was about a quarter of a mile, and that the cross weighed somewhere between 100 and 300 pounds. Can you imagine doing that after already enduring so much torture? After a long journey, he finally arrived at Mount Calvary, where he was laid upon the cross, and large nails measuring approximately 5 inches long were driven through his hands and his feet, causing excruciating pain. Then the cross was raised up, and they left him to hang there to die. And he hung up there for 3 long hours until he breathed his last. Crucifixion was horrible. The suffering that led up to it was horrible. But Jesus went through all of this for us, to open up the gates of heaven and give us all the possibility of salvation. We need to be clear that Jesus didn't just die for humanity as some sort of collective group. Rather, he died for us as individual persons. We have to understand that when Jesus was hanging upon that cross, he wasn't seeing things as a human being would see them. He was seeing them how God was seeing them, for we know that he is truly God. Because he's God, as he was going through all that suffering, he could see each of us individually, even those of us who were born 2,000 years after he lived upon this earth. Jesus could see each and every one of us, and he saw us as he was suffering and dying. So a lot of times when we say, Jesus died for me, we think that's a platitude, but it's true, because he could see us as individuals. So he did die for just you. He did die for just me. And if you or I were the only sinner in the world that needed saving, he would have gone through that horrific suffering just the same. This also means that Jesus suffered and died for Peter, who denied him 3 times. He suffered and died for Judas, who betrayed him. He suffered and died for those who wanted him to die and those who plotted his death. He suffered and died for Pilate, who condemned him to death. He suffered and died for those who flogged him and scourged him, who put that crown of thorns on his head. He suffered and died for those who drove the nails into his hands and his feet. Jesus' violent death was not the result of chance. It was not the result of unfortunate coincidences or circumstances, but rather it was part of the mystery of God's plan. Jesus knew that he was going to die. He didn't just enter Jerusalem and then this just happened. We know that he knew he was going to die because he predicted his own passion and death several times. In fact, he predicted it right before he entered Jerusalem on that first Palm Sunday. On that first Palm Sunday, before he rode into Jerusalem, he said to the apostles, "Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be handed over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death, and hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and scourged and crucified." Look at the detail of how much he knew ahead of time. He didn't just know that he was going to die in some way. He knew the exact manner that he was going to die. He knew that he would be crucified, but he also knew that he would be scourged and mocked beforehand, and he also knew who exactly would put him to death. When he entered into Jerusalem, he knew what he was walking into. He freely accepted this death. He chose to die this way. And why? Because he loved us. He loved us all. He loved us as individuals. As he himself once said, "No greater love than this, for a man to lay down his life for his friends." It makes it so much more heroic that he knew about his death ahead of time and then chose to do it. If he didn't know he was going to die and then that just happened, that would be much different. But to know that you are going to die, and to know exactly how you're going to die and how awful it will be, and to choose it anyway, now that's love. In imitation of Jesus Christ, we can also freely accept and choose death for others. Now, most of us will not have to choose to physically die for others like Jesus did, but we all have to choose to die to ourselves for others. What do I mean by that? Well, dying to self simply means letting go of all selfishness in our lives. This means letting go of any intentional selfishness, but also even the unintended selfishness. This means letting go of anything in life that we hold on to and cling to for ourselves. This dying to self, this letting go of selfishness, should not be purposeless. We should not do it just to do it. Rather, we should die to self and let go of selfishness to help us choose to love others more fully. During this time of social distancing, during this time in which all of our routines have been changed, it can be easy to fall into selfishness focus too much on ourselves. But it doesn't have to be that way. Even during this time of social distancing and isolation, it can still be a time in which we choose to die to ourselves for love of others. We can choose to help out our children with e-learning, even though we would much rather do something else. We can choose to get off of our devices and think of creative ways to pass the time with our families. If we find ourselves getting tired of spending time with our families, we can still choose to interact with them, even though we'd rather be alone. We can still choose to pray on a daily basis. We can choose to participate in all the live streaming opportunities in the parish, even though that may not seem as satisfying as doing everything in person. During this time, we can still choose to let go of our selfishness and rather choose to love others. In imitation of Christ, at the start of this Holy Week, this holiest week of the year, we can still choose to make sacrifices out of love. We can still choose to die to self so that others might find life.